Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome back. I'm very excited. The box of Medieval Knights from Victrix has finally arrived. Quick shipping too. It shipped out on Monday, and today is Saturday, so it arrived from the UK in just 6 days. So I also wanted to show you, I realized I didn't make it clear in my last video that they don't ship things in the bag with a shipping label on it. They come in these boxes when Victrix ships things. If you order more, it'll come in a larger box. But they have must have quite an extensive collection of boxes, because every time I've had an order from them, it almost seems like the box is tailor fit to the number of items that I've got. So you can see here that this pretty perfectly fits the box. And in fact, there's another one that I've got when I ordered the Athenian hoplites that like the box was basically form-fitting to the shipping container that it was in. So anyway, so it comes with some bubble wrap to keep everything in place. They always come with this nice little thank you with some information on other kits that are available on the back. And as with the last set that they sent me, they were kind enough to send transfers on this one. And you can see that there are two types for the Medieval Knights. There is a transfer set for the barding, and you can see that these are Templars. And there's a set of shields. So as I said in my Greek video, I'm going to do a separate video showing some completed models with the transfers attached, but I'm also going to do a separate video just on Little Big Men transfers on their own, because they really are an incredible product and I think warrant a separate video just talking about them. So once again, thank you Victrix for sponsoring this video, sending me the set, sending me some transfers to go along with it. I'm very grateful for that. So as I said, the containers now all come in bags. The bags shipped in boxes. But let me move this stuff out of the way here. See everything. So all comes in a bag like this. And you can see there's a whole bunch up here where if this was in a retail setting, it would just be hanging by that. So yeah, everything comes in these bags. Now, interestingly, this is 18 models. And for those of you who've been wargaming for a long time, are used to multi-part plastic sets, I would argue that 9 out of 10 of them come in sets of 12. 12 is the standard for multi-part plastic mounted models. And indeed, a lot of other Victrix sets come in sets of 12 models, but this is 18. So this is 43 USD for 18 models. The top, call it alternative that's on the market is Fireforge Games. They have their Templars, they have Teutonics, and they have, I think, Western Knights. It's all just like head variants. And those are 12 models for about $30 US. So interestingly, though this set is more expensive than the Fireforge one per model, this is about $2.39 a model, whereas the Fireforge one is $2.50 a model. So larger set, more expensive, but better price per model as well. So we'll take a look at how they compare at the end of the video, as I did with my Greek set. I'm going to compare it to Fireforge Knights. Down the road, I'll do a separate video comparing Victrix, Fireforge, and ultimately Wargames Atlantic mounted Knights once those are released, because all three companies, again, I think by the end of the summer, will have sets that are covering about the same time period in terms of mounted Knights. So with this set, as we saw in the last one, it comes with some schematics. We'll take a look at that as well in just a moment. But it also comes with 2 sprues. So I did not see a command. Yeah, so 3 of the rider sprue, no command sprue. 3 of the rider sprue, 6 models per sprue. So again, that's your 18. And then it looks like we have 3 of the horse sprues. So we'll take a look at these one at a time and see how things look. So real quick, so I'll get organized here. Again, the schematic, just as we saw with the last one, it's a very simple system. So they're recommending body 1 with any of these arms and any of these heads. So you can see that this body does have a unique set of heads that they recommend, whereas all other bodies, you can use any head that you want with it, right? Except for these 4. And that has to do with the way that they're mounted. So this one has like a ball mount, and these ones are all flat. So you just drop them straight on top. And then I mentioned too in the Greek video, and I'll say again here, that these I do believe are recommendations. Like there are combinations that will exist that they don't recommend that work perfectly fine. And most of it has to do with the way things connect. So as we saw here with the head, with the ball mount, that's going to affect how it attaches to the head. Likewise with the arms, I mentioned that I find most of the time it's mostly like specialty weapons, like a two-handed weapon that's supposed to go with a specific body, where you'll find that's the case. But also you can see at a glance, like if a body has part of, say, a tunic sculpted onto the arm sticking out here, you're gonna have a harder time finding an arm that attaches to it just by like picking one at random. So take a look at that when you're putting these models together. It's usually pretty evident when you're just glancing at it if there's a difference in the way that it's sculpted. Like if there's a part of the arm on it, you have to be a little bit more selective in which arms that you choose if you're not sticking to the schematic. So otherwise, just as we saw in the last one, pretty straightforward. Really cool combination of weapons. We'll take a look at those on the sprue, but there's a couple on here that are kind of unique looking, and I like that. Good set of scabbards there, shields, and then of course the horses. So enough of that. That's what we're used to. So let's take a look at the horses first, because it's a somewhat simpler sprue than the mounted knights. So again, 3 of these sprues, 6 horses per sprue. Do overview shot here so you can see what we're looking at. And these are beautiful. I mean, just excellent sculpting. Fantastic for Bretonnian players maybe that are looking to expand their collection. You'll appreciate maybe that they don't have those heraldry sculpted on the side, like the kind of triangular shapes. These are really, really nice. Excellent sculpting. Cool too that they have the saddles sculpted separate from the bodies like this. So you, again, I'm curious to see how that affects things when putting the models together, but you can see even these saddles have some designs sculpted onto them, which adds a little bit more variety in terms of customizing these models. And as we've seen with Victrix now, this being our second set that we've reviewed together, but this is one of many, many sets that I've looked at with Victrix. Not only is the sculpting very crisp, but mold lines are minimal. So another cool thing about it, again, just from a design standpoint, you know, I'm used to seeing usually like 2 or 3 horse variants when I'm looking at a set of, say, 12 models, and usually the heads are interchangeable, and so that gives you some amount of variety. But this is actually 6 unique horses, so you're only going to see the same horse 3 times, and again, you have minor variations you can add in terms of the saddle. And I'm curious to see if any of these bodies match up in a way that they don't necessarily recommend here, because like Perry horses, you can do that, where the left and the right side are not necessarily matched up to a single combination, which means that you have some leg angle combinations that you can find that adds further variety to just, again, these 6 poses. But also you can see here, like even in this these reins on the barding, that they're different, right? So they got slightly different sculpting styles, which is just very cool. So again, if you think about that you've got 6 unique combinations of horses, even with 6 riders, if they're all equipped the exact same way, it gives you an incredible amount of variety just in the body poses that you can achieve by mixing things up. So this is a very strong start as far as I'm concerned. And then we'll move on to the body sprue. Now, Victrix had just announced, I had a little short that I put out kind of overviewing what we can expect in terms of medieval sets that are coming out this summer and into this fall of 2024. But Victrix just gave a surprise announcement that they're releasing a set of Tonic Knights, which I imagine, much like Fireforge games, I think it's going to probably be a similar sprue, but with the heads up here being different. So they're going to be more Teutonic, kind of great helms with accoutrements on it, right? So like horns and things like that. So at least from what I saw from the renders, I think that's going to be the case. But we'll wait and see, right? So Victrix has surprised me multiple times in terms of not reusing the frame of a kit, that they'll just redo the set entirely. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. But it's more exciting stuff from them on the horizon. So once again, let's do a quick overview shot of what we're looking at here. As we've seen with Victrix, and I guess a lot of manufacturers really, typically we're looking at bodies toward the center, heads all off on one side or on both sides, but toward the edge of the sprue. And then you've got weapon arms kind of in the middle there. So yeah, really crisp, clean sculpting. I like seeing, like, for example, the backs of shields. These are the fronts, these are the backs. I like seeing sculpting on the backs of shields. That's always nice to see, even just from a painting standpoint. So if you have like part of a shield hanging over an arm, that it's not just flat, bare plastic. You can tell they put a lot of thought into the design of this set and the sculpting of this set. I'm struggling not to go into detail on some of these individual pieces that I'm seeing before we get there, but yeah, I'm really impressed. So let's talk about bodies here first. So lots of weapons, lots of head options. From what I saw online, I think it's 54 total heads for 18 models within this set. So from glancing at this, it looks like there's 18 on the sprue, because we got 14 here and then another 4, so that's 18, and then times 3. So yeah, we're in the ballpark there. And then in terms of weapon options, we'll get to weapons in a second. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place because I'm kind of giddy about this set. But yeah, let's take a look at these bodies. These are really beautiful. Anybody that's dealt with the Norman sets, we'll see some crossover here. These all have tunics over their mail. And the sculpting on it is really fantastic. Again, 6 individual poses. The torsos are all attached to the legs, which again, Victrix sometimes will separate them, especially on command sprues, just because it adds some pose variety. But it makes sense here. Again, these are already dynamic enough poses that you don't necessarily need to separate them here, and it would cause potential issues with overlap here, right? So yeah, really excellent sculpting, good variety of poses here, even a variety of the tunics that they're wearing, right? The way that some of these are cut in different places, slightly different lengths. Nice sculpting on all the folds here. And, you know, generic enough that they could be painted however you want, either as, you know, traditional Western knights in their own heraldry or as military orders, right? So you don't have to call these Templar knights, right? They can be any kind of knight that you want, and then just paint them up as you like. So as we saw with the transfers, you can use, again, transfers for military orders, or you could do, again, there's barding transfers that match the shield designs that come as well. So lots of options for you there. So beautiful sculpting, even on, again, like, look at the detail here, guys, on like the belts, some of the rivets, some of the like ropes and stuff that are tied here. Everything is unique, everything. It's just the attention to detail. I've said this about like Perry miniatures, that it makes me feel challenged as a painter, that I want to go through, like, if you can sculpt this, that I sure as hell can take the time to try to paint it. So yeah, really excellently done, excellent detail. In terms of weapons, you can see you've got a good variety of weapons. Lances in both couched and in upright poses down here. Now, for those who are looking for, like, call it like, I'm comparing it to like Bretonnian knights, right? Like a jousting lance. I believe that those never really saw combat. Like, you wouldn't see those on the field. That really was more of like a jousting style weapon. And regardless, the time period that we're covering here, even if they did show up later on, this is still too early. This is, again, 1200s, something like that, roughly like Third Crusade time period is what I think we're covering here, potentially earlier too, and potentially a little bit later. But yeah, in terms of weapon options, you've got some good lance options here, couched lance, upright lance, and enough to equip each model either way is what it looks like here in terms of the total number of options that are available. You also have hand weapon options for every single model, and some of these, let me get up close on them. Some of these, you look at the detail here, like on this axe, right? It'd be easy enough just to have a regular axe, but they've gone to the trouble of adding in detail. Like, look at this, it's just beautiful. So again, you've got a war axe here that could be flipped around to be like a cavalry pick down here. And notice too, let's just talk about the axes for a second. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 axes, and every single one of them is a slightly different design. Look at this. So you've got one here, you got one here, which even that has a little bit
out of the axe blade. This one here, and then this one up here. And you also have some maces. See one down here, one down here, and once again they are slightly different designs. Sword arms too. The swords look about the same size, but even like again, so here, like look at the hilt of this sword. Look at the hilt of this sword. Same thing here. This one's got like a more intricate pattern on it. So it's little things like this. This is what has drawn me to, again, this one's different too. This is what's drawn me to Victrix over the years, is that they really pay attention to small details. And while at this scale, at the tabletop level, that might not matter. Like maybe no one would notice the difference between hilts on the swords of your knights. The fact that they've taken the time to put the thought behind that not only shows their dedication to their craft and making these miniatures, but I think for me, as someone who enjoys painting miniatures, it adds a lot to the experience, right? That it makes me pay more attention to the model that I'm painting, knowing that every single one of these is going to be slightly unique. Let's talk about heads now too. Again, 18 heads per sprue. And as we saw with, so these 4, I believe, are the ones that are unique to body B1. But again, I can tell you from experience that if you cut off the bottom of this here, just cut flat, you can very easily put that on these bodies. So this is your B1 body. You can tell again just from the way that it connects. So, but if you cut these flat, you'll be able to drop these on top of these bodies. No problem if you wanted these heads on any of these bodies over here. Just take a little bit of cutting work, but simple stuff. But again, let's take a look at the detail here. Again, no 2 heads are the same, as we saw with even the swords. They really do care about detail and individuality within miniatures. Yeah, and really nice variety of helm types, face mask types, representing, I think, a pretty wide period of time to allow you to do earlier crusades, and again all the way up to, I think, the 3rd crusade and beyond. Some faces exposed, and again the sculpting, the detail work here is really phenomenal. Good number of great helm options too, for those who care about that kind of thing. And I wager, again, I'll put some models together at the end. I'm going to compare to Fireforge. I'm going to compare to War Games Atlantic Infantry, just in terms of scale, because I think, at least I care about that kind of thing. But I would wager from looking at this that these bits would be pretty interchangeable with both of those kits. So I'm curious to see, especially with my Fireforge stuff. I mentioned I've been using some War Games Atlantic bits to kind of elevate that kit. I'm curious to see if the Victrix stuff is interchangeable with it as well. So yeah, beautiful heads, really great work, good detail, and as I said, good variety. Right. Shields too, so you can see actually, so again, there's 6 bodies, but there are 8 shields, and you can see down here, here are the shorter style shields. And again, even look at this, it's becoming almost like, I don't want to say comical, but it's delightful that they, like, it would be so simple for them to just take this shield design, copy it 6 times, and boom, there you go. There's your 6 shields. You know, don't complain. But every single one of these, except for these 2, say that these 2 are copied, these 2 are copied. This is unique, this is unique, and then these 2 are different as well. And again, look, so these are like, I would say these are closer to Norman style kite shields, but they don't have the bosses in the middle and they're not quite as long. So you can see kind of the evolution of shield designs here, just like we see the evolution of armor, we see the evolution of weapons, all within one sprue. So really beautifully researched, well put together, excellently sculpted. So as I said, I want to put these figures together. I want to put a couple examples together for you, and I'd like to compare them to War Games Atlantic Infantry and Fireforge Templar Knights, so that we can see how they compare, mostly in terms of scale. And here we go. So I have 3 assembled models here. I got some Fireforge models on the left, some War Games Atlantic Infantry on the right, and I guess actually let me move these aside for a second, because I just want you to see these miniatures in their own right, on their own, because before I talk about the assembly, before I talk about any individual details, just look at the poses on these miniatures. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this in a multi-part plastic miniature. Yeah, like I've seen kits that can be assembled in a single way achieve poses like, but I mean, just look at this. This was, again, I picked a random horse to go with this rider, and look at how dynamic this pose is of this knight with a couched lance leaning over to impale some poor soul. It's really incredible. Every time I put a model together, I thought like, oh, that's going to be my unit champion. And then I put another one together and thought, oh, no, that one for sure, that one's going to be my unit champion. But all of them you can see are just so individualized, so unique. And the finished product, I think, is just absolutely breathtaking. So let's talk a little bit about details. So I did find that none of the horses, the left and the right bodies, could be interchanged, right? That they all go together in a set way. I did find that the saddles, though these schematics have a specific saddle going to a specific horse, with these three, I dry fit all three in different combinations, and they all fit fine. So if you wanted to add a little bit of variety to these horses, you can mix and match some of these saddles. You can see some of them have like some fluting here. Some of them have some more intricate details on them. So that would add a little bit more variety to these horses. But again, with 6 unique horse bodies, I actually don't think you need much more variety. As I said earlier on, that means you're only going to see the same horse 3 times. And of course, you can put a different rider on each of them to make them a completely unique miniature. So my only criticism, I think, of the kit is, let me actually bring a Fireforge model in just so you can see it by comparison, is anybody that's put together a multi-part plastic horse will know that there's really nothing to do about it, but there's always a seam line right here when we're talking about boarding. Let me bring the light down. You can see there's always a seam. And this is across every manufacturer I've dealt with, because the 2 sides of the horses have to go together. The head usually goes on, maybe the tail's already affixed, but there's always going to be a seam here, either where the barding is or where maybe some part of the saddle or bridle is. That exists here, so it's no criticism of Victrix. However, with some of the more dynamic poses that they've achieved here, again, just look how stunning that is from the side. I can't even criticize without complimenting. The only criticism I have is that seam line, while on some models, as you might expect, is hard to notice. I think once you paint over it, certainly you could green stuff over that without any issue, even like liquid green stuff, because it's very thin, right? However, with some of the more dynamic poses that they've achieved, the way that the line kind of zigzags across the model, like look at this one here, you can see it comes back, it cuts to the left and cuts back to the right. I found that a little bit more distracting than, say, on this miniature here. But again, as I just said, I actually think paint is going to cover up a lot of that anyway. And if you're really worried about it, you could do a little bit of liquid green stuff, a little bit of green stuff. But other than that, guys, these were a dream to put together. They were so simple to assemble. Everything matched up perfectly, flush. Again, I randomly chose bodies for these horses. And again, when I was putting things together, I was mix and matching between horses to see what poses I thought fit what horse best. And really, it was hard to choose because all of them look so great on all of these different horses. And again, there's 3 unique horse bodies beyond this as well. One other compliment I want to give it is we didn't talk about it when we were looking at the sprues, but the sword scabbards that you see here are, I think, the best, not only sculpted, but proportioned sword scabbards that I think I've seen in any multi-part plastic kit. Because one of the problems that you'll run into at this scale is finding the balance between something being proportionally correct, but also not looking kind of weenie. That's a problem with Perry miniatures, for example, where everything's sculpted beautifully, but the weapons in particular, because they're so true scale, they're also unimposing, because like a sword at that scale, 1/48 scale, is very thin, right? So Victrix, I think, has done a great job here of kind of threading that needle of making something that is proportionally, like roughly correct, a little bit more on the heroic side, but I think for miniature wargaming purposes, looks excellent. And so that's what we have here with these sword scabbards in particular, that they're a little bit beefier, I think, than I've seen from, say, for example, Perry miniatures. Fireforge, you can see on these models, they actually have them sculpted. That's a bad example, but here, they have them sculpted onto the models themselves. And you can see that, again, this is pretty correct from like a proportion standpoint, but it's not very impressive looking, is it? So these are just a slightly thicker sword design, to the point where, like, I almost hope, in the way that they did with their Greeks, that they release a set of like heads and sword scabbards, for example, for medieval knights or infantry, because I would certainly pick that up to use even just the sword scabbards across some of my other hobby projects. So yeah, really excellently done. I deliberately didn't clean up any of the mold lines just so I could show you guys where some do exist, but they're so minimal. So again, like down here, as you would expect on the side of a body, again, on some sides of helmets, you'll see a little bit of mold line work that needs to be cleaned up. But again, it's the kind of thing where the side of your X-Acto knife going over gently is going to get almost all of it without any issue. So same thing here. So again, little mold, you probably can't even see it on the camera. But it's all the normal places you would expect with a plastic injection mold. So again, that's what I'll do once I'm done filming here. I'll go through and I'll clean them up a little bit more just with the side of the X-Acto knife. But yeah, really just incredible miniatures. I think probably my favorite kit that I've put together from Victrix, and as I've said before, I've put a lot of them together. So anyway, enough fawning over these miniatures. Let me just show you really quickly here at the end a couple of scale shots here for those who are curious. So as I mentioned, we have some Fireforge Templar models on the left, and you can see that they scale up pretty perfectly with them. So here we go. Let me move these out of the back. So that's what we're looking at here. We've got Fireforge Templar up in the front. We've got a Victrix Medieval Knight in the middle, Templar Knight in the back now, and then another Victrix Knight. So if you had a unit of these that were blended together, they would blend together flawlessly. I think the scale is almost identical. And in fact, on this particular model, if I move these aside, this one here, I actually used a Victrix head. So this is right out of the Medieval Knights kit. So I just popped the head off of this guy, put the head on from here, from the Medieval Knights set on here, whereas this one is from the Fireforge set. Actually, I think it's from the Tonic Knights set, and I just cut the, I don't know, little thing off the top of the head to make it like a flat grade helm. But again, I think that the helmets are better proportioned on the Victrix set. So that's what I think I'm going to do with all my Fireforge Knights, is swap them out for Victrix bits. So again, from a proportion standpoint, those work together perfectly. And you can see here are my newly assembled Wargames Atlantic Foot Knights. And I think that these go together really well too. Again, it's hard to compare infantry to cavalry. Ultimately, I will pick up the Victrix Foot Knights set when that's released. I think later this year, maybe in the fall. They had said that they're in sculpting right now. But you're going to have a Victrix set that closely resembles the Wargames Atlantic set in terms of content coming out later this year. So I'll pick that one up and mix and match, as I like to do with my kit bashing. But you can already see that these are quite comparable in terms of scale and design. And once again, I have so many heads left over from the Medieval Knight kit that I think I'm going to mix some into my Wargames Atlantic guys, just for some added variety as well. So there you go. So scale is not an issue at all. And once again, this is a really phenomenal kit from Victrix. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes out. Again, I think next in line is going to be their Islamic Cavalry and Infantry, which should come out a little bit later this summer. Of course, their Tonic Knights that they had surprise announced are going to release first. But then Islamic Infantry and Cavalry, and then some Foot Knights down the road, and then hopefully some other stuff. Maybe they'll do some levy of their own, some foot sergeants, something like that. So time will tell. But in the meantime, another excellent kit from them. I highly recommend you pick this up. As ever, thanks for dropping by, and happy gaming, guys. Until next time.